Three, two, one. We're live. Hey, everybody. I know it's been a little while since I been on Facebook Live, but I had a request to talk about formal axiology. So formal axiology is one of the things we do here at the Behavioral Resource Group. It's really about defining, identifying, and understanding value orientations. In other words, what we value, how we value it, how clearly we perceive things in the world and in ourselves. So I'm going to just immediately go right into a screen share mode here and put myself down in the corner. Who was that? I just saw somebody pop up there. Okay, so okay, yeah. So I'm excited about this, and I want you to be able to follow along. If you have any questions, you can post it. I think I'll see that live as they come up. All right, so let's start off with what is formal axiology. So formal axiology is really about defining, identifying, and understanding your value orientation. So that's what we need to understand. So what we value, how we value it, what kind of biases we have in our brain, which is really how much attention do we give to certain things? What did I go and do now? Hold on a second. I somehow, it's just typical. Oh, there we go. I somehow shrank. What on earth? I shrank my screen. Anyway, I can't fix it because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So who cares? We're going to keep going. Okay, so let me see here. All right, so Robert S. Hartman, he's really the author of Axiology. And he was born in the early 20th century. Lived in Germany. He was a lawyer at one point, and then I think he became a judge, and was responsible for putting away some of Germany's atrocious people, sociopaths. And then when Hitler really rose to power and things started to look bleak, he fled Germany to America and devoted the entire rest of his life to creating basically a mathematical concept around the ability to measure good and bad and how people value things. So it was really his experiences in Nazi Germany that brought him to an entire life of measurement in measuring human value. And he was nominated for a Nobel Prize, not nominated, he was, what do you call that? Elected to be a participant in the field of one who could be nominated for the Nobel Prize. He didn't get it, but he was nominated as a potential recipient of the Nobel Prize, which is pretty cool for his work on human value. So, you know, axiology is interesting because you're ranking 18 items, okay? And you're ranking them in a hierarchy, like which one do you value the most? Or you know, do I value a warm meal over a short circuit, okay? Something like that. And there's 18 items. There's different genres. There's an outer world and an inner world spectrum, And so we're going to be looking into all of that as we go through this. But if you're ranking 18 items, there's actually 6.4 quadrillion combinations that'll come out of that process. So as human beings, okay, we process between 45,000 and 65,000 thoughts per day. And in our thinking process, what Hartman and others since Hartman have discovered is that your brain thinks in three major ways. There's three fundamental ways to think. And these three ways of thinking are going to be incorporated into all of your thoughts. So if you're thinking 45,000 thoughts per day, every one of those thoughts will be in one of three camps. So it's important to understand that. And we're going to look at those camps. So Axiology 1, 2, 3, I use this when I'm working with companies and explaining them how this works. Number one is the mind, where all our psychic energy comes from. So psychic energy is really your emotional consistency. It's the four primary emotions: anger, optimism, patience, and fear. And which emotions out of those four primary emotions are in consistent use? In other words, you lean on them. So maybe you lean on anger more than you lean on patience, or something to that effect. So our mind in our brain is where our psychic energy comes from, our energy for decision making, picking and choosing in the world. There are two worlds. So mind is number one, worlds number two. So two worlds: the outer world, so that's everything outside of yourself, it's the things around you, and the inner world, the things within you. It's that inside dimension, the inside self. Within the inside self and the outside self, there are three dimensions. The scientific word is intrinsic for one of these dimensions, extrinsic for the second dimension, and systemic for the third dimension. So we're going to simplify that. We're going to call it relating, or some people call it feeling. So the relating aspect is, how do I relate to people? So out of 45,000 thoughts, there's going to be many of those thoughts that are related to my relationship or relating to another human being. That would be considered intrinsic. Extrinsic is all about doing things. It's a practical sense. And so when we're doing things, we're thinking a certain way. And then systemic, which is thinking itself. And we will break these down. So the three dimensions of axiology: think, latitude, longitude, altitude. And so, it's in space-time. That's how we're pinpointing the way we think in our brains. So the feeling or relationship or the relating field deals with people. This is the thinking we use to connect with people, to build bonds with people, feeling bonded to somebody, and feeling itself. So uniqueness and singularity as in a priceless heirloom. So I've got a chair here. See this chair? Well, you can't see it. Well, anyway, I got a chair here. It's not priceless. It was like, I don't know, $100, a couple $100 or something like that. So it's not priceless. So when I look at that chair, I'm not feeling anything. But if I've got, my sister has a high chair that goes back, I think, 5 generations, made by a relative. It's made with pegs. That's different. When we look at that, we think of everybody in the family that has sat in it. That is different. I feel something when I look at that high chair. I think about me being in that high chair. I think about when my children were young and going to visit my parents, my children being in that high chair. I think about my mother sitting in that high chair. Okay, so there's feeling, and it's infinitive. It's infinitive, and what does that mean? It means there's no comparing and there's no time associated with it, which means I have an Afghan that a great-grandmother made. So when I put the Afghan on, I can think of that great-grandmother. There's no time. Even though she's no longer here, I can still feel that. That's what feeling is all about. That's what relatedness is all about. So we're measuring people's clarity levels and biases in association with relatedness to people. It's mainly people, but it can be things like a chair. Number 2, things. So this is hands, people, heart. Oh, he's got a heart for animals. You've heard something like that. What are they talking about? Feeling. Okay. Things, hands. This is doing. This is the thinking we use to pay attention to properties, parts, steps, when we measure, weigh, and we make practical comparisons. Okay? So this is a very pragmatic piece. So think pragmatism. Knowing what to do and when to do it is the height of what common sense is all about. So the thinking that we use when we're using common sense is this piece. And then finally, ideas. And I heard, I can't think of his last name. His first name's Rich, but he's an axiologist. And he said this, heart, hands, crown. I believe that's an Irish thing. And so the crown is the thinking. So you would put a crown on your head. So this is about ideas. All right? The thinking we use when we're focusing on rules, order, meaning, plans, goals, the future. In other words, how we believe things should or ought to be. Okay? Standards. All right? Standards. So these are the 3 dimensions of axiology. People, things, ideas. Feeling, doing, thinking. Okay? Now, intrinsic objects in time. So again, things that have value in and of themselves. Infinite value. People have value in and of themselves. You've heard me say this many, many times. I talk about it all the time. So although my grandmother is no longer with us, I still value how she sang to me. So there's an infinite value there. Extrinsic objects and time. So extrinsic, or things, all right, tangible things that are a means to an end. A process or an action in real time. So this is now. This is all about now. So it's a functional role now. What's a functional role? I'm a dishwasher. That's a functional role. I've got to wash the dishes, and I've got to wash them now. I'm not going to wait. I got to wash them now. So how I view what needs to be done and when it needs to be done would be considered in an extrinsic dimension. Systemic objects in time. Okay, thinking. This is the thinking. So the conceptual constructs in our minds about what should be. In other words, you need to fully stop at the intersection. Something I failed to do once. So this has to do with what should be. What should you do when faced with a stop sign? So systemic objects and the timing. The time here is the future. It's when I'm in a situation, what am I supposed to do or what should I do? Okay? And this all has to do with anything that has absolutes associated with it. Here's a good one. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. You either fulfill the concept or you don't fulfill the concept of being pregnant. Okay? You're not sort of pregnant. So, you either are or you are not. So, systemic objects, this thinking piece has everything to do, I'll add, with black and white thinking. So you need to understand that. So let's recap. Intrinsic, people, heart, feeling. Extrinsic, hands, doing. Okay? Pragmatic, common sense. What to do, when to do it. Systemic objects, systemic, right? Thinking, concepts, conceptual constructs, the way things should be. Black and white thinking, either or. Either the concept is fulfilled or it is not fulfilled. Okay? So, now that we've went over the 1, 2, 3s of axiology, let's look at the ABCs of axiology. So A, attention. So what do you pay attention to? Where are you looking when you're looking at something? So when we're looking at something, what are we paying attention to when we're looking at it? Okay, that's our attention level. We measure this. Balance. Okay? Do we see what's right about something or positive? Or do we see what's missing about something? What's negative? Do we see both sides of the coin? Where is our focus? So, although we're placing attention, how much of that attention is negative and how much of that attention is positive? How much of that attention is based on what's present? How much of that attention is based upon what's missing? And then number 3, the C, clarity. How much do you see? Is our area of vision wide or narrow? So I want you to think about, I wish I had something I could use here. Well, here's a good illustration. So, if I'm looking with both eyes, I have a visionary perspective that's like from here, to here. It's this kind of a 180 spectrum. You've been in a theater like that, 180 degree theater. But what if I'm, looking, like this, okay? My view becomes much narrower. It's a narrower scope of vision, which can be more creative because not everybody is seeing something that narrowly. So I become more outside the box of the statistical norm, let's say. So your clarity level is how much you see. Another way to look at that is, think about wearing glasses. So if you wear readers like I do, which makes me want to clean these right now, but if you wear readers like I wear readers, how many have been to a restaurant and in that restaurant it's dim lit, you're looking at a menu and you forgot your readers? Well, I don't care how hard you try, you can't read it. You can squint, you can look through it, and there are times when I would create a little pinhole with like this, and I would look, trying to look, trying to see what's to eat because I'm starving. And so this is what happens. Your clarity is very difficult and sometimes not possible to change. Okay? This is the one thing that's really important because you really can't change. I can't make myself see better unless I get LASIK surgery or something. Other than that, it ain't going to happen. But what can I change? I can change what I'm paying attention to. Okay? Although I can't read the menu, somebody might say, Steve, over here. And I look over there, and now I'm talking to them. So now I'm paying attention to them, but I'm not paying attention to the menu. That's easier. That's a lot easier to do. But to change my vision from, actually my vision is 15/700 because my left eye, I got a nail through it when I was a kid and that screwed up the vision. They had to remove my lens, so it's just a blur. And so no matter how hard I squint, I can't change that level of vision. Okay. I'm hoping I'm live because there's no one's, it doesn't look like anybody is saying anything here. I wish I could figure out why my thing shrunk on me. I touched a button and it screwed it up. All right, let's get back to this. So let's talk about clarity and perception. Okay, some people see things like this. So this is an obstacle course. So when we're looking at a person, okay, we're talking about the related area, relationship area, relating or feeling. How much of that person can I see? So sometimes we have this almost like a bird's eye perspective of people. I see everything about that person. I know when they're upset. I know when they're angry. I know when they're happy. I know when they're confused. I see into people. See, I have crystal clear clarity here. So this is one of my assets. So when I'm looking at people, I clearly see people through and through. That's why some people call me a psychic. So I can see people. I see emotion. I see it all. I see everything. They call these people sometimes seers, right? Why? They see more even than most people. Okay? Some people see this way. Okay? So, this is what happens. If you're viewing things like this, if this is your more narrow scope of clarity, when you're looking at what to do and when to do it, you look at this and say, oh, this obstacle course won't take long. Oh, I'll have this done by Friday. Then you start the course, right? All of a sudden, you're like, wait a second, what happened? This course is a lot longer than I thought it was. What just took place? You didn't see this. You saw this. This happens at work. Okay? We don't see everything. We only see something sometimes. And therefore, we're wondering, how did this person get ahead? What, how many of you have ever helped somebody move? Okay, you're helping somebody move and you're loading the truck. You've always got a few people, stragglers, standing around eating pizza. And then you've got other people working really hard and they're loading the truck. And then there's that, quote, one guy. And I remember that one guy when we moved. His name was David. And, we're putting stuff in the truck. Everyone's putting stuff in the truck. And he stops everything. He goes, hold it, stop. We got to get this stuff. We got to take these 3 or 4 things out of here. And I'm like, oh, come on, because I'm more dominant and less patience and all that. And I just want to get this thing. So he's like, trust me, Steve. All right. So he pulled a bunch of stuff out. Then what he does is he takes some other things that were scattered around and puts them in the truck and then puts everything, belts back in the truck, and actually gained like another 6 feet. And we're like, what did you just do? It was like a magic act. What happened? When David looked at all of the stuff we were moving, he saw it like this image. He saw basically the finished product. He knew where everything should go instantly. What is that called? Crystal clear clarity in the role, in the section of practical thinking. In other words, what to do, when to do it. What to put in the truck and when to put it in the truck. He had it. I didn't. Okay? And so I was looking at the moving truck like this. He's looking at the moving truck like that. Who's going to be more efficient? And he's low dominant, like a 10 on anger. So he's got 2 speeds, slow and slower. But yet he made it fast. Oh my God. So you can see knowing this kind of stuff is super powerful. All right, let's talk about attention bias. clarity and bias. So clarity, our level of perception, this is what we were just talking about, is our perception keen or is it highly diminished? Are we seeing everything about what to do and when to do it? So when we're looking at what to do and when to do it, how much of it can we see? Oh, we could do this, we could do that. You know, we've got all these options. Or is our view very diminished? So I don't know. If we don't do this, I don't know what else to do. Right? Very important. So the clarity, as I said earlier, is the most important thing because to improve, because it carries the greater weight. What I can see, how much I can see. The less clarity, the more we have to rely on our bias, which is what we believe already before looking at it. Let me say that again. If your clarity is diminished, you're stuck with your bias. So depending upon what the bias is, that's what you'll think. True or false, it doesn't matter. That's what you'll think. So what bias is attention. It's what we pay attention to when looking in a person, a thing, or at an idea. So our attention can be shifted, as I told you. We can decide to pay more or less attention to what is essentially right or wrong about a person, thing, or an idea. But it's easier to control our attention and harder to control our clarity. Better clarity always equals better choices. So clarity is super important. And because no matter how strong the bias is, you're not necessarily relying on it. Okay? So let's give you some images of what this really means. So think about the aperture in the camera. Look at this camera. It looks like a flippin' telescope. So this is a huge aperture, you know, bringing in lots of light. So how much exposure is happening? You know when you leave a lens open for a long time to create time lapse, more and more and more and more of what's going on comes in until you have like 24 hours of stuff, right? So think aperture. Or is it, very, very, very small? Is your aperture underexposing everything? And that's how we do it. Either things that we're looking at are overexposed or they're underexposed. There's a high degree of attention or there's a low degree of attention. Okay? And that's what's important to know. Okay. So intrinsic, extrinsic, and systemic. Again, those are the scientific terms. So we're talking about people. So we're talking about relating, doing, thinking. All right, those are the three. Relating, doing, thinking. So here's the key. Intrinsic valuation, or people, is better than things, and things are better than systemic values, what we think about things. Okay, so in short, what does this mean? People first, things second, and then ideas about people and things should be third. But is this what companies do? Is this how people run business? How about a big resounding no? You know how many times people come last? Okay, we're trying to build a sales team, so we got to think about what territories do we want? Future. Okay, so it's an idea about what we're going to do and when we're going to do it. We're going to take this territory and that territory. So that's number one. We got to figure out our territories. Then what we got to do is figure out how we're going to go about doing that, blah, 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 blah. And then, hey, let's find some people. Okay, that's why I'm busy. That's the main reason why. Okay? How about what kind of people do we want to represent our culture? What kind of people are we going to need to work with Billy Bob over here, who's, acts like Attila the Hun, but he's great at what he does. So who's going to be able to withstand that kind of energy? Because if we get the right people, then what we do and our ideas about doing it and our future concepts will tend to fall into place around all the right people. Business is about people, and it's the one thing you don't see Facebook ads talking about. What are they talking about? Funnels. All people want to do is how much money can I make and how quick can I make it. That's really what people care about. Okay? If you look at the world of entrepreneurs right now, where's all the money coming from on the internet right now in these entrepreneurial spaces? Selling crap, right? Selling courses, selling. What are they doing? It's all ideas about people and things. Okay? And so, oh my God, this gets my goat. So we get so focused on these things, then we're working in a business and we don't understand the way a person is, we get rid of them. They're not working out. Well, you're clueless about their brain versus your brain. How many times does an organization let go a great potentially talented person? They're not tapping into the talent. Okay? They're not tapping into it. And so it's really important to know how that works. All right. I'm still getting this sneaking feeling that I'm not live. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shut this off and start over. That's what I'm going to do. Let me check my calendar in case this is live and I don't know it. But that's what I'm going to do. Oh, I am? All right. I am live. Okay. I'm not going to quit. There we go. You know what? This whole time, I've been looking at the wrong window. There you guys are. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. You ready? Perfect example of intrinsic. Okay? I'm unconventional, right? Oh my God, that's unbelievable. You just got an example of my attention level. I'm clueless sitting here. If I don't have major instructions and all that, and thank God my wife's out there around the corner and she must have been watching this. Oh man. Okay. All right. I'm so excited now. All right. Hey, Timmy. Good to see you, buddy. All right. Well, let's get back at this. So, let's move to the next thing here. Okay. There's transposition and composition. So transposition is an increase in something of value. Yeah, you're talking about attention. Unbelievable, man. I love it. Hey, this is what makes me successful too, right? It's why I'm not, working on railroad tracks. So composition is an increase in something valuable. And transposition is an increase in something of less value. Okay, here's a good example. So when we're hierarchying and we're ranking, we're putting items into a rank order in the HVP, or what we call the IBO now. We can increase a bad item because there are bad items in there. All right. There are good items and there are bad items. And our goal is to look at each item and determine, is this a good or bad item? So some of the things that are in there, slavery, okay, good or bad, right? Well, we just had somebody recently rank slavery as good. Okay. So that creates a particular dimension for them, and it creates a report based on all of these things. All right. I had an individual, one of the things is a wedding ring. It says, with this ring, I thee wed. It's a statement. And you have to rank, is that a good statement? Or is that a bad statement? And I had a guy place, with this ring, I thee wed, in a hierarchy. Now, there's a set hierarchy of where these things are supposed to be based upon the science of axiology, which has been vetted and proven and validated over and over and over and over and over again in many countries as totally accurate. Okay. So that's not up for discussion, the accuracy. So, what we had here is this client of mine, he put the wedding ring where a trash heap is supposed to go. So as soon as I saw that, I'm thinking, oh, he's recently divorced. And sure enough, he was. So in that current moment, he's like, F the wedding ring, man. In his brain, he had a very negative bias, about the wedding ring. All right, cool. Let's go to the next thing here. All right, let's look at the outer world dimension. So we're going to look at feeling, doing, and thinking in an outer world dimension. What does that look like? Because this is we're measuring 6 dimensions. This is one of them. All right. So let's look at that. So empathy is dimension 1. It's empathy. And we'll call this the feeler. Okay? The feeler. And what does all this mean? We're going to go right through this so you can get it. All right? Okay. So how clearly do we see or perceive and understand people? Right? So we measure it. Okay? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels of clarity. You've got a big aperture, or you've got a very small aperture. So remember this, okay? You've got a very narrow view and perspective looking at people. So this measurement here that we took out of one of the reports, this person sees people clearly. So they have a good understanding of people. So this dimension is really about relationships, okay? You can see in a transitional piece, what does transition level clarity look like? Imagine, those of you that live up north, you get out and you go into your car in the morning and you get the windshield is ice, right? So you put the defroster on. So after a few minutes, you've got this little tiny hole in the middle lower end of your windshield that you can see through. That's transition level clarity. So you're kind of like, what the, you're looking at people and you got low level clarity. So you're like, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So what is it I already think about what I think I'm looking at? See, that's what I got to rely on. That's known as your bias. All right. Let's look at the next thing. All right. Do I understand what another person is thinking, feeling? Can I really, really feel and understand where another person is in their life? Okay? Which includes what they want, what they need, what they desire. Do I bond with people? You ever ran into somebody and you feel like you've known them for 20 years? What does that mean? It means they have either clear or crystal clear clarity. So does an unconventional person not see people accurately? How do we define accurately? Yes, you're right. So when you're unconventional, your view of people is diminished, so you notice certain kinds of people. Okay? And what kinds do they tend to be? The people that think like you. Okay? Those are the ones we open to. And those that don't think like us, we're like, screw that. Like, I don't see it anyway. And if my bias is negative, then they're probably a jerk anyway. Move on, right? This is what we do. So when you have crystal clear clarity in the empathy world, which is what I've got, okay, then I can understand people better than they can understand themselves. Okay? Which is why I'm in this business. I understand people naturally better than they understand themselves. That can be scary, and it can sometimes come off as offensive because I'm already 6 steps ahead and thinking what they're thinking, and I'm like moving on, and they're thinking, hey, don't you care? Why don't you hanging out here with me in my depression? You see? So that kind of a thing, like I just have that ability. So anybody with a real strong, crystal clear sense of who people are and what they're I was on the phone with a client today. We talk 15 minutes every week. And I was telling him, your way of dealing with people is this. I told you not to do this. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, that's how he deals with something that went wrong or something that wasn't done quite right. I said, what if he said it like this? Hey, by the way, have we talked about this yet? And I listened to what he had to say. He goes, yeah, no, I do the first one. I said, I know you do. I know you do. But what if you said it like this? Hey, have we talked about this yet? How would you even know to do that? You can see into people. You can feel what they're feeling. And you know right away, this is not going to go over well if I do it like this. You know that. He doesn't know it. He doesn't see that. I got to tell him. I got to tell him he's an ass because he thinks he's a hero. It's poor clarity, right? So, but the more I tell him, and the more he relies on what I tell him, and the more he trusts me, we can start shifting his brain. All right? Super powerful. All right. Are we negative and cautious? Or are we positive and open when talking to people? How big is our aperture? Is it like this? Am I letting a lot of light in when I'm focusing my camera on people and overexposing it? Or am I going down like this in a very narrow view, and then on top of that, I've got negative attention. So I'm underexposing the film. How many have ever had underexposed film or overexposed film back in the day when we had cameras that had film in them? All right? You understand exactly what this means because of that. So we can be paying excessive attention to something, or we can have a diminished amount or become detached from something. Oh, all right. So there was dang it, his name escapes me. But what he did was he went into prisons and he put serial killers through the HVP assessment. This assessment right here. He put serial killers through the assessment. Guess what? They had crystal clear clarity when it came to empathy. They could crystal clearly see people. Okay? But where was their attention? Where is the bias? All the way to the left. It was all the way down. Totally detached from the people. Which is why when they began to think Ted Bundy was a serial killer, everybody disagreed and came to his defense. He's the nicest guy. He's amazing. I love this guy. He's great. Oh, could you help me lift my sailboat onto my Volkswagen? I got a broken arm. He's got it in a cast. He knows just who to approach in order to ask that question because he clearly sees people. He clearly sees he clearly sees they're altruistically driven just by the way they're sitting on the beach. He can see it. But he was completely detached from that individual as a person. And he had a negative sense towards women. Wow. So I was consulting with the client overseas this morning in a hire. So we got the behavioral assessment out, and we're looking at the emotions, and we're looking at which emotions are most consistent and in play, and we see that optimism was consistently in play, and it was a core emotion, which means optimism was the only emotion in play, which is outgoing, talkative, friendly, unrealistic, persuasive, and characteristically, challenged in the sense that they have a tough time navigating their time and prioritizing activities and things of that sort. But they had this super outgoing and, thing. And I said, okay, we got a strong influencing type here. All right, let's move on. Let's look at the value set. What do they value? So we got a very, very rare style. Very, very rare. So rare, about 10 out of 1,000. And alternative thinkers, so alternative lifestyles, alternative things, and even into some alternative weirdness, that can happen. So, it can, certain graphs, it could be they're willing to do mushrooms, or it could also mean they might be a pedophile. So what it means is the alternatives are so high that it goes so far outside of what would naturally be expected in a normal society. And that's how they tend to think. Well, I don't know what they're doing, but I know what their capacity for doing something is, because I know how they think. So we saw that. I said, okay, this person could be a little quirky. And have you talked with them yet? Oh, yeah, we did. She goes, can I kind of see what you're saying? And I said, okay. All right, let's look at the IVO report. And we did. We went into the empathy section. And when we got into the empathy section, we had 100% negative. We got this outgoing, talkative, friendly, but completely and utterly detached from people to the point of where it's called cynicism. Anytime they look at a person, they're completely emotionally detached, they're emotionally distant, and critical. And I said, did you know this about this person? And she said, well, most of the guys loved him. I said, they loved Ted Bundy too. That doesn't mean anything to me. She goes, oh my God. I go, what? She goes, when I talked with this person, I had a funny feeling that I was being played. And I said, okay. Say, listen, I'm just saying, here are your numbers. And then we went through, and there's some other real outside of the box stuff in there. And I said, you can do what you want, but I'm going to call this profile flagged, which means hire at your own risk. And she laughed and said, okay, thanks. Right? Okay. And there's been some research done where they took, let's say, 700 profiles that were flagged. There was a flag. 700 HVPs that were flagged. 697 of those people either got fired or performed poorly in the role. That's how accurate this is. So, again, super, super powerful to understand how these things work and how they happen. So we can be detached from people. Does that make you a bad person? No, it doesn't. It just means you're detached from people. And when you're detached from people, they become objects, not people. Where's the hammer? Where's the screwdriver? And where's Bob? Because they're all the same. Because he's strong, he can help lift this. And then when he's done lifting it, see you, Bob, thanks. You want to go to dinner? No. I'm not attached. I'm not feeling you at all. I'm using you. Good or bad? Neither. It's just how it's done. Okay? Some people only see other people for their usefulness. Okay? Only for the usefulness. All right? And don't get hung up on good or bad. Now, I say this next slide is something I talk about a lot. So it's going to be, you're going to hear it again. Baby Jessica McClure, 1987, the 18-month-old baby that fell in the well in Midland, Texas. Okay? So, there were people that spent 54 hours doing everything humanly possible to get baby Jessica out of the well alive. All right? So that's important. And, if you remember this, when they first started digging, they ended up inadvertently digging in the wrong place. So they didn't want to collapse. They didn't want to collapse the well. And so they had to change their trajectory because by the time they get down there, it was way off. My question always is, especially when I'm lecturing on this stuff to the crowd, did they run a cost-benefit analysis before digging again? No. Why? Because anybody who would do that would be considered a sociopath. Okay? Because human beings, remember we said this in the beginning, they hold value in and of themselves alone. You can't compare them to anything. And their value is infinite. It's infinite. They have infinite value. Okay? And thank God, they rescued her, and there she is today. And she was definitely, a life worth saving. All right. Let's look at the doer. So outer dimension number 2 in the world dimension. So outer is the world dimension. Inner is self dimension. And we're going to talk about the doer. Okay? So how clearly do I see what needs to be done? Okay? Remember the moving truck example. How clearly do I see what needs to be done? That is a nice story. But we will kill millions of innocent people through bombs and wars for profit. No infinite value. Nobody bats an eye. Okay, see, now I've got I'm getting your profile there, Tibby. That's a very, very, very strong statement with a very, very strong bias. And I have your profile, and we talked about this. Okay, that's good. Okay. How do I clearly see what needs to be done? So this dimension is about results, right? How many ever heard of procrastination? Okay, this is where you can tell if somebody will procrastinate, if they're a procrastinator. Okay, so here we're talking about a dimension of results, doing. How clearly can I see? Excuse me. Dang it, I hate it when that happens. You're getting like you're going to vomit. So how clearly do I see what needs to be done and when it needs to be done? Because remember, this dimension is about real time. It's about now, which is why we say this dimension is about results. So I want to go back to this picture here. Do we see all of what needs to be done? Do we see all of what needs to be done? I got to paint this, I got to do that, I got to do that. Or we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do that. There's more than one way to skin a cat. We've got a bunch of options here. Which one do you want to choose? Come on, let's go. Right? That's clear, crystal clear, or clear clarity on what needs to be done. What if I'm unconventional? Well, I only see certain things that I think need to be done, not everything that needs to be done. And I only have certain ways of doing things at my disposal. Everything else, I don't know. It's not there. All right? It's not there. Your brain is very specific, and we are more at the mercy to our minds than we believe. Okay? And if you knew, you would not believe me. So here's a good example. Everybody that's watching, I want you to think of a city right now. Think of a city anywhere in the world. Think of a city. Okay? All right. So when I said that, cities came out of the abyss of your unconscious mind and came into consciousness where you became conscious witness of several cities. All right? Now, who picked Cairo? All right? Maybe somebody out there picked Cairo. Maybe they didn't. But when that happened, let's say you didn't pick Cairo. Let's say odds are good you didn't even think of Cairo. All right? So when you think about, well, I probably know 100, at least 100 cities. Your brain knows 100 cities. Because when I say Cairo, you're like, yeah, I know Cairo. It's in Egypt. Like you knew that. Yeah, but it wasn't available to you. So you might as well have not known about it because when it came to picking a city, it never showed up. Okay, you had a party, you invited Cairo, it didn't come. So it ain't there, right? But you're telling me, well, yeah, but I know it's a city. Yeah, but it doesn't benefit you. Okay, you didn't know because you would have said it. Or you would have said, yeah, that was in the list of what I recalled when you said think of a city, but it wasn't. All right? What came into your conscience? Everything associated with probably something you've done in the last 24 hours. Okay? And so there's a lot going on. So when we're looking at what to do and when to do it, the only thing that comes into our brains in our conscious section that we become conscious witness of is the only thing we can access. That's all we got. And if not enough comes in, you're in trouble. Okay? You're just in trouble. So what'll happen? Well, you'll be spending more time on something that's not important and less time on something that's real important because what was real important never showed up. Didn't come into your conscious witness. It's not there, right? So this is what happens. This is how the brains work. So we have a aperture that can get really big where we see everything that could be done. Or we have a very diminished or this size or this size or this size. It depends. Everybody's different. And depending upon where you are, we can tend to predict what's likely going to happen. All right. Or we see in things like this. And I don't want to belabor that point, so let's move on. Can I understand what needs to be done? Can I see the picture? Big picture, clearly, including many functional ways to getting a job done, right? We could do this, we could do that. You got to remember that. Do I see things so clearly that I can hit the ground running? All right? Some people hit the ground running. They've never done fill in the blank before, yet they seem to know what to do. Right? What do we call that? Wing it or fake it until you make it. Right? So there are people that what to do comes out of unconsciousness and into the conscious brain where they can witness it and access it and capitalize on it. Okay? So some people are more pragmatic than other people. What does that mean? It means this. Common sense ain't so common. And this is why. Okay? Does that mean if you don't have common sense, you can't have a job? No, it doesn't. It just means depending on what you're doing, who you're doing it with, who you're doing it for, and all these different things, it all starts to play. If you're in a situation where time is of the essence, don't hire a procrastinator. All right? That's just the way it works. All right. What time is it? So we've done an hour. So we can keep going, or we can do this in two parts. So if I can, I'll do one more slide, get a little feedback there, and see what people say. So, am I instant and action oriented? Let's go. We already know what to do. Let's go. Right? Towards what needs to be done. Or am I hesitant and cautious? Whoa, wait a minute. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Right? You know, people like that. You know, they're at work and they're kind of standing around. You know, kitchen's moving fast, you know, opening oven doors, pulling out bread, doing this, doing that. And then there's people like, they're just looking around. They don't know what to do next. They don't know what to do now. They don't see it like that. They're trying to get their bearings. And everything, get out of my way, get out of my way. right? Years and years ago, right when I got out of high school, I took a job in a manufacturing home facility where they manufactured single wide and double wide trailers. Okay. Hi, Diana. Yeah, I'm at the dentist listening. Oh, I picked Boston. That's right. All right, cool. That distracted me. So now I lost my train of thought. What was I thinking? I completely fell off that wagon. All right. Oh, manufactured housing. So I worked in this trailer factory, and the first week I worked there, I screwed everything up so bad they had to close the plant. Okay. They had to close the plant. I mean, it was so bad. It's like me trying to run Ecamm Live. So sorry. And they took me into the office with the president of the company, and he's just looking at me going, Steven. And I'm sitting there like, doy? What? Oh my God. Just no practical sense. And so that did not come natural to me because I'm unconventional, right? What was my job? My job was take what was known as a hurricane clip. So it's a little metal clip with a hole in it that it screws in with a 6-inch lag bolt through the clip up into a 2x6, and then that clip would hook to the I-beam that held the floor of the trailer. It held the trailer onto the structure that had the wheels on it. So it looked like a giant fishbone with nothing on it. And then you lay it down on the floor after it gets painted with this black oil stuff to weather protect it. And then we lay black paper on that thing. We create a wooden 2x6 frame around it. We fill it with insulation, R19 insulation, and then we throw joists across the whole thing all the way down. We nail it all up, and then we screw it all together. My job was to lay on a dolly, like a mechanic's dolly, and scoot around on my back and shoot these lags up both sides of the I-beam. No light down under there. 120 degrees in the factory. This is Florida. And wearing just cut-off corduroy shorts and sneakers with no socks. And scooting around these trailers 60 feet long. And I got to get that thing lagged before it moves down the assembly line. So my first week, I got it all wrong. The lags were all wrong. I had to go back and take every trailer apart and do it over. And it took me a couple days. So I worked that job for, I'd say, a year. Maybe a little more than a year. It was like 1981, so it's hard to remember. So by the time I left, you ready for this? By the time I left, I could lag a single wide trailer floor, you ready, in 7 minutes. I was the fastest lagger and bolter they'd ever had. And that put me into a thing called piece rate, where I got paid by what I did, not by the hour. And I was making, at that time, really good money for a kid. But once I figured it out, okay, I created unconventional ways of doing things faster. But I had to get my bearings. My way of doing things is screw it up first, fix it second. I'm just that way. And so I know that, about myself. So, I embrace it, whatever. Okay, I'm trying to end here. Let me see. Where do we go? Okay. Oh, I love this. Am I too cautious? This is how some people approach work. You know, they get a new, they're in charge of something new, right? They're in charge of something new, and this is what they're doing. They're crawling around with a metal detector, like, what's going on here? What do I do? Now you take this and you put it with a behavioral orientation. So let's say their behavioral orientation is passive. Let's say their behavioral orientation is calculated. Let's say their brain approaches everything as if they're dismantling a bomb. And so, it's just crazy. And this is how they're trying to negotiate work. What happens if this, hey, thanks, Tibby. What happens if this person is in a role that means go, go, go? What are you doing? You're holding up the team like me on an assembly line. What's going to happen? Well, you'll end up shutting down the factory like I did. Okay. So I was approaching things kind of like this, but because, you know, axiologically, I was approaching what I didn't understand like this, right? But behaviorally, I was like a road runner. So I did everything fast because I have two emotional speeds, fast and faster, not slow and slower. And so when you combine fast and faster with trying to find your bearings, then you make big mistakes. Okay? And that's what I did. Like, I make a lot of mistakes. Okay? Oh, by the way, I got pulled over by the police yesterday for like the 5th time in 2 years and talked myself out of the ticket again. So I think I might do something on talking yourself out of tickets. I've got the best driving record right now. It's perfect. And I keep getting stopped because I'm not paying attention and I'm fast and faster. And then I do the Sisler charm and man, get right out of it. And I had this guy laughing. Oh, it was beautiful. I'll have to tell that story, sometime. I make it a course. Okay. We have this. You didn't tell me, honey. I swear. Last night it came to me again, and I was going to tell you, but I forgot. See, I forgot. Right? How could you forget that? All right. Funny as ever. All right. Where are we? Okay. We're going to stop. That's like an hour. And this will either be one more part or 2 more parts. But we'll end it there. And the next thing, it's going to be a lot more than that. It's going to be a lot longer than that. So anyway, okay, we'll do this in a couple, videos. So we're talking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about axiology, the study of value, how we value things in the world. So let me reiterate before I stop. So we have one mind where all our psychic energy comes from. We have 2 worlds, the inner world and the outer world. And we have 3 dimensions. Okay? Feeling, doing, and thinking. Hey, Frank, thanks for tuning in, buddy. So that's really what axiology is all about. We'll be taking this up later on with another one. How about tomorrow? I'll do it tomorrow because I know I took the day off. So I might do 2 of them tomorrow just to wrap this up before the weekend. And that'll be great. And so what I'll do is I'll stop the video after the and then I'll start another one so I can have 3 videos all together. All right. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time.